Hey everyone, welcome to my spoiler corner. My name's Leslie. Thank you for joining me on my channel, Books, Girls, and Purrs. We're going to discuss My Name is Romero. It's a poetry collection by David A. Romero, who grew up in Diamond Bar. He attends poetry slams. He even opened for Ozomatli, which is a pretty cool fun fact to learn about the author and poet. Let's just dive in. Right off the bat, I said in my review short that I gave this 4 stars. I'll basically break down each poetry section. I'm not well read as far as poetry is concerned, so I won't really be able to break it down into by like maybe like the poetic tenets, I suppose. So we'll just start there. So this collection, it is about identity, but not necessarily just identity, but identity confusion, as the author is Mexican American, talking about his experiences and also maybe what people expect him to be, kind of like projecting a binary on him. But that's not really how people work, right? We have so many different facets. We have so many multitudes. It's a part of our identity. I just don't want to forget anything. So I am definitely looking at my notes. He also talks about history, politics, family, social justices or social justice issues, and Latinx culture. He also does talk about love, which I'll talk about. It's not that I have a distaste for the topic of love. I just didn't really like how it was a bit shoehorned in here, but I'll kind of wait till we get to that section to chat about it. All right, so on my notes, there are, is it 5 sections? Let's find out. There are 4 sections. There's My Name is Romero, which is the largest section. Flowers, Beloved, Etymology, and so although My Name Is does have the author talking about identity confusion, growing up in America, being Mexican American, it takes up such a large portion because not only does he talk about, let's say, an experience of being someone growing into their goals and identity. For instance, one of them is undocumented football. So it talks about someone, you know, doing just that, meeting their goals. And so there's like this analogy taking place about football, but about life, being undocumented, becoming an American citizen. And I felt like there was like a sprinkling in a way of like the American dream. What does it mean to that person? And then he goes on to talk about Make Me More Mexican, which is also very much like about the hypocrisy, kind of like how I was talking about like what someone expects you to be, and also the pressure for someone that's Mexican American through the generations needing to know Spanish, as if there's something wrong with the English language, but Spanish, which is from Spain because Spain colonized so many people, is also like this colonizer language. So why is there so much pressure to learn a different language from being colonized rather than an indigenous language? So he kind of like pierces like that particular I don't know, pressure of how someone should have to perform their culture, just because maybe the way that he looks or the way he talks isn't what someone else wants him to be, kind of. So I appreciated the way that he did talk about that. He also not only talks in terms of being Mexican in terms of identity, but also food. And then he kind of branches off to talking about, I would say like almost like the colonization of food, right? Which is this expansion on what's the word, food being gentrified. And I thought that was like a way that I appreciated him tackling the subject. And actually reading that reminded me of another poet named Jessica Salgado, I think, Soldado. I'll look her up and I'll include her below because she has several poetry collections. She also lives over here in the Los Angeles, California area. And she does talk about the the experience of being a woman and feeling like her body is what's being colonized. And that was just such a powerful dialogue that she created. And I feel like Romero does something similar here when he talks about himself and also food. He's talking about like all the different layers of gentrification and colonization, and I thought that was a fascinating read. And then he goes on to this poetry collection, but I feel like I'm going to say it wrong. And I forgot to look up how to say it. It looks like sweet, I think, poche pie or poch pie. And he talks about how some people will migrate and then deny some of their culture, I guess in a way to like fit in possibly, or deny parts of their culture. And it just like exemplifies someone letting this heritage as part of them fade away. And there are two poems in here that the author explores not just accepting, or I would say like acknowledging the parts of himself that are a part of like colonialism. So in other words, how Spain came in and did everything they did to the people in Mexico and the indigenous people. So there's this acknowledgement of that, yeah, his heritage might be or is indigenous people, but also the Spaniards that colonized as well. And how do you reconcile that, you know? Or he's just opening that up to at least like acknowledge, because you have to, right? You can't turn away from one part of yourself, I suppose is what he's trying to say. And then layered in, he kind of reflects as a little kid, how he said something to his dad, just being a little kid and not actually realizing it, that it's very much ingrained in like racism and the bigotry that his father had to deal with that he didn't know, and with that experience felt like saying something as a little kid and not realizing like how hurtful it was. And so I appreciated that there's this acknowledgement of one part of himself and observing something else from being a child. He does then go into politics with patriots and lunatics, and talks about just like the terrible rhetoric that's used to try and say like, well, specifically like Mexican Americans, how they're terrible and that they shouldn't be here. But I guess it's the idea of like othering people, when it's like, it's a very hypocritical take, because we just have so many people that do terrible things that are Americans in all their other facets, right? And all their other identities. But also then he goes on to have an open letter to Donald Trump, Edward James Olmos, Cat Williams. So it's a response to things that they have said, those public figures. What people will do when they are public figures, have money, what kind of stance they're willing to take, and how that hurts people, how that hurts citizens. Yeah, I don't want to say too much, but I found it fascinating to hear his letter of response to these individuals. Then the author goes on to talk about, there's like two poems. One is Black and Brown, Fight Tonight, and the other one is Watch the Throne. And so the first one is more about observing how there should be maybe more unity. And the other one is about exploring how the Black population has made so many like contributions to the music industry, and they just that's like a group that doesn't get acknowledged, and that it gets appropriated and used by white artists, and then they're the ones that get the acclaim. And that actually reminded me of the book by Hanif Abdurraqib, A Little Devil in America. And I almost feel like Hanif Abdurraqib writing that book is also like creating an answer, right? Trying to make sure that these artists aren't forgotten and that we keep alive their contributions. Or also, I can't think of the author's name. I think it's Lenee Denise. I hope I didn't mess it up. But she wrote a book called Why Willie May Thornton Matters. And I think that can also be connected to that particular poem about not letting Black artists that have contributed to the American music zeitgeist and music all around just not be forgotten. So I appreciated that poem in particular. And there's a couple of more in this selection. It's just it's so much. Oh yeah, there's a poem called Letters Across Borders that I absolutely loved, and it really talks, it's like not a letter to a person, but to how do I say this, countries, I guess. So one is to the United States, one is to the Israel, and it's talking about what these two empires are doing on the borders and how they're brutalizing and colonizing others. And it was a very powerful, beautiful poem. I wanted to share a poem from this collection, but each poem was actually really long, so I'm still debating. Maybe I'll share that one. So out of all the letters that were written in this particular selection that were like open letters, that is the one that I really loved the most and felt like still speaks to what's being exasperated right now. Oh, there's another one called We Eat Our Way to World Peace. And I find that fascinating because what he's saying is that when I eat, ultimately someone labored in the farms to get me food so that I have access. But why is it that the farmers aren't the ones that reap their rewards? Why are they not revered when they do so much for us? And so I appreciated that poetry collection. There's another poetry collection where the author talks about the American dream being a ladder. And I guess I have like complicated feelings about that because I also feel like the American dream is a lie. So, but it does allow for opportunity, I guess. And the author does liken ice to snakes. So it's like someone could try to climb that ladder, but the snakes are there to hold people down from climbing it. And I appreciated the way that he kind of put that analogy together. I don't know if it completely works, but I did enjoy it. And so from that grouping of My Name Is, I get that he's basically saying that there's all these different elements that all add up to his being. But I felt like that first collection of poems was just so long. I almost felt like I wanted it to be broken up. Like maybe all the open letters could have been a different collection, maybe. And then they still would have worked. I just don't understand why he had that one be so long. But it's something to think about. Then he goes on to have a very short collection. There's like 2 poems called Flowers. And it speaks to the residential schools and what kids went through. I'm not going to get explicit, but just make sure that when you look up this collection that you look up the trigger warnings. And also there's a poem that's about the last queen of Hawaii. That was really beautiful, but also speaks to how the islands were stolen. And not only just that, but it is still told like within that open letter sentiment. And so the person that's writing the letter, which isn't really told through the author's eyes, it's more through like characters. And so the letters are in a way of making it very clear that this queen is truly just held captive. So she doesn't really have a choice over what's going on. And I appreciate those elements, really talking about how her autonomy was taken away. I thought that was a very important element that isn't always captured in some of the narratives. I mean, that it could be understood from what happened, but it's more personalized, and I appreciated that. Then the third one is Beloved, and that's the section that I wasn't too keen on. So the author talks about secret beaches, the woman with many names, it could have been magic, Rosemary. Yeah, that's all of the kind of like more love poems. So the first poem is about like a toxic relationship. The second one is more love and a positive relationship. And how the third one is just how like a relationship could feel so like visceral and magical, but even that is not enough. And the last one is called Rosemary, and that's how someone could be on their deathbed and a longing for somebody else that was in their life. And so that's more of a deep, long, fulfilling love, I think that speaks to. And so although I like those poems, there's nothing wrong with them, I just felt like it didn't really fit with the rest of the collection. And so earlier I brought up Jessica Salgado, and I felt like I brought her up also because of this collection. And what Jessica does so well is she does explore the relationships she's been in, but also how her identity and how it's perceived, how she gets treated as well. And I felt like because of this collection is so connected to the author exploring their identity confusion, or how people project how he should perform his culture, I felt like I would have liked that to been maybe captured in how that's affected his relationships, because then it would have connected or made more of a stronger thread of this section of basically like exploring love. Be more, I guess, cohesive and well placed, and we didn't really get that. So that's the only reason why I felt like none of that fit. Not that everything has to be dark and without love, but I just wanted to connect more. And there's only one last poem, and that is Our Name is Romero. And that basically just connects to the fact that like he has this last name, and it is connected to the Spaniards that colonized Mexico, and just acknowledging that, which I did talk about earlier, but that's the poem where it's really captured. And I just felt like I don't think I read enough about that subject. There's only been like one particular book, and it was a nonfiction book. I don't think I read it last year. It could have been the year before. I don't remember. And that was about, oh my gosh, let me look it up because I don't want to forget. All right, I got it. It's Mexico's Nobodies, the Cultural Legacy of the Soldadera and Afro-Mexican Women. My camera died, so I had to move everything for a minute. All right, just to finish this off, I did like the collection. The love section didn't really work with everything else, so that's why I took away 1 star. And something else, but that's more a subjective topic, is I appreciated the poet bringing his perspective and experience, and he does touch upon the idea of how forcing someone to speak a certain language is just kind of like a symptom of what colonialism does, which is divide and conquer, and division is really just people arguing amongst themselves. So we're basically doing the work of the oppressor, the colonizer. But I almost wish there was a further rebuttal to that, and just talk about how unity and the strength of numbers is more important than trying to pick at each other. And so maybe there could have been more of an olive branch within our community, the Mexican American community, about how one's existence does not trump another's. We all just like exist. Yeah, so that was kind of on my mind when I was reading it. But although I did feel seen, I felt like, and there's so much frustration in this, I would have liked to see that added piece in there. But either way, I did enjoy this poetry collection. Also, I'm naming this for now the spoiler corner. I don't know what else to call it, just so that just to let everybody know that every time I make these videos where I kind of talk at length for each section within a book, that it's always going to be like a spoiler. So that's all I've come up for now. But let me know what you think. Please subscribe, like, comment below. I always like to hear what you think. And I'll talk to you later.